So I work for Meetup, and hopefully you know that that is. We're a platform where people can get together around a common interest, whether that's Android development, there's a great Meetup here in New York, or basketball, or whatever it is. And Meetup's a really great product, I think. I worked on it for 6 years on the Android app, but we're not going to talk about that app today. This is the only time you're going to see our brand color red in the whole presentation. Instead, we're going to talk about Meetup Now. Meetup Now is a new product we're building where we're focused on making it easier for folks to host a meetup without the overhead of meetup groups. So that can be a one-off meetup, whether it's a relatively heavy topic like racism, or something a bit lighter like a new movie, or just like it's the beginning of summer, let's get together and drink iced coffee. All these meetups actually happen, but this is the one that photographs the best, so that's the one you get to see a picture of. We wanted to build it really quickly with a small team. We just had 3 engineers, all 3 of us full stack, doing the front end and the back end. And if you can see this timeline, which I'm not sure if you can or not, we went from get in it to launching an alpha to some of our coworkers on other teams at Meetup in just about 2 months. And we're still in a phase of rapid product change while we're trying to see if there is in fact a market for our product. We want to run a bunch of experiments and run them all pretty quickly. And of course, there's another complication, which is that we don't just want to target Android users. We don't just want to target iOS users. We want to target both. And so if you read the title of the talk, it won't surprise you to learn the name of the technology we picked, React Native. But you might not know much about it. You might not know what it is. So React Native is a framework for writing apps in JavaScript. You can package them up and have them run on user devices, both their Android devices and their iOS devices. And there's like some Windows Phone port that I don't know if it works or not. If you meet anyone with a Windows Phone, maybe have them let me know. What's cool about this, in contrast with some older frameworks like Cordova or PhoneGap, is that the JavaScript can create real native views. This is not HTML and web views, this is real native views. And the way it does that is there's some native code running, and the JavaScript sends messages to the native code telling it what views to create, what changes to make for those views, if the text changes or whatever. And you can also write your own native code if you need to. In practice, we've written like 10 lines total since the beginning of the project, but if you need to do something fancier, the technology is there. So let's look at a tiny example of what the code looks like. This is our chat screen where members can talk to each other if they attend a meetup together. And we want to make the avatar components the little people circular pictures that you see on the left. And so this is the code where we did it. And what's cool about it is that we can build this class which is like slightly specialized for this chat use case out of other components which are not so specialized. And you may not be able to see the code from where you're sitting, but the point is that this is a very simple composition of basically 2 classes. Touchable opacity is something provided by React Native itself, which just lets you touch on stuff and provides touch feedback. And NowImage is our own class that knows how to talk to our image servers for actually fetching the image and displaying them. And you can see that the whole thing is just a few lines of code because we're able to build it from basic stuff. And that's generally how React Native works and React in general, if you've used it at all. Building complex stuff out of simple stuff. Fine. On iOS, React Native uses the JavaScript core which is provided by iOS. And so I'm now, I guess, technically an iOS developer, but I still don't understand like the App Store rules. So I guess that it is required to do that on iOS. Android, however, doesn't have a JavaScript runtime outside of a web browser that you can just use. So what happens is that a version of the JavaScript library is shipped with your app. And so this is like mixed blessing curse. Some of the stuff that's cool about this is it means that like the vendors can't mess it up. You don't have to worry about being out of date. The curse is that it makes your app big. We use ABI splitting so that the app doesn't get as bigger by as much as it should, but as much as it could. but it's still bigger. In fact, Meetup now, even though we've only been working on it for a few months, is actually a bigger APK size than Meetup, which has at this point 7 or 8 years worth of work going on into it. And that's mostly because of this heavy JavaScript dependency. Another thing that's kind of weird is that Facebook, which makes React Native, doesn't update the version of JavaScript they ship very often. So there are third parties that update it for us, and we're using one of those. So you have some control of your own stack, but it's a sort of weird control. So there's some things about this way of building apps that we've found we really like. And let's start with like the most useful feature of React Native, in my view, is that you can actually make an app that runs on both Android and iOS. And so like there are some people who give talks about React Native and they're like, it's so good, we would use it if it only was on one platform. And I don't know if those people are telling the truth or they just want to seem like smart. We think that like the killer feature is the ability to write an app and have it run on both platforms. So if you remember, like back in Java days, they made this promise that never really came true, write once, run anywhere. What we found is like write 1.1 times, run in 2 places is actually like still a pretty good deal. And we're not focused right now on a web client for our product. Our website is just like a marketing page right now. But if we ever did, then the ability to have some code use would maybe like write 1.6 times, run in 3 places, which is also like a pretty good deal, if not the lies that Java promised us way back when. And also like, you still can't see the slide, even if I show it to you a second time, but I promise you that we're iterating rapidly. We did the initial build quickly, and we're iterating rapidly. And part of the reason why this is possible is because we have, again, only one code base, so if we need to change how a feature works, we don't have to wait until, you know, an iOS engineer and an Android engineer are both free to work on the same feature at the same time. We can just change it once and then ship it to both platforms a few days later, whenever we're ready. And another thing that's cool that we like about React Native is this ability to do hot reloading. So when we ship the app to end users, the way we're doing it, we just bundle up the JavaScript and ship it to the end users in an APK or in an iOS package. But in dev mode, you have a web server essentially running on your dev laptop so that you can, and what's cool about this is you can make some changes to the JavaScript code. You can press the reload button. If you're using the iOS emulator, it's literally Command R. If you're using Android, you have to like do a shake gesture and then press reload on the screen. But then you're running your new code just a couple of seconds later. There's also this like really hot reload where as soon as you save the file, it can reload it. We found in practice that doesn't work so well, but for most of our development work, we're able to not rebuild the app, just load the files that are changed on the phone. And whereas when we're doing native development, you know, you get the 30-second, minute longer compile times, and that just is out of our workflow for the most part. Another thing that we like about the way we've built our app is GraphQL. Now, technically, this is not part of React Native. You can use GraphQL without React Native. You can use React Native without GraphQL. But we do find that they play really well together. We're really bullish, actually, on GraphQL. We think it makes client development easier and also server development easier. And so it's really the one thing we're trying to take to other teams at Meetup. We feel like we know this is a win. We're using something called Apollo, which is a package of GraphQL libraries, again, both on the client and the server. And we're in fact using that for all of our local state management. So no Redux or anything like that in our app, if that's something you've heard other people mention. So I got this spec, and what it is a list of events that the user is attending, and what's weird about it is that each event has the most recent comment. And so my first thought was like, this is going to be a real pain. I'm going to have to like talk to the server team, and they're going to have to build indices and all this stuff, and they're going to hate me. The second thought I had was like, oh wait, on this project I am the server team, so I'm going to hate myself, which was a little bit frightening. And then I realized that actually it's really easy. No server-side work was required at all. We can just have the client ask for the data that it needs. Once you've got an event in GraphQL, it's pretty easy to drill down further and ask for the top event comment for each of those events. We were then able, once we had this working, to add a GraphQL subscription so that it live updates. So if any event that you've gone to has a new comment, that index screen that you saw will just automatically update with no reloading. And so that was not zero additional work, but it was relatively little additional work. I was kind of surprised to notice there were no GraphQL talks here at droidCon this year, but there have been in the past, and we think it's really great. There are other things that we're less bullish about, but not, we don't totally hate our lives because of. One of them is JavaScript itself. It had been kind of like a long time for me. I don't know about any of you, since I had done like a lot of JavaScript work. And so if that's the case for any of you, like JavaScript is better than it was by quite a bit. It's not quite a powerful language as Kotlin maybe, but other times it's like just fast and good and easy. The concurrency primitives are basic, but like just work most of the time. And you can get static typing if you want it with Flow or TypeScript. We're using Flow. Don't ask me to defend that decision, but it seems fine. And since we control the JavaScript runtime on Android, and we only have to support 1 or 2 versions of iOS, a lot of the most painful stuff about JavaScript on the web just kind of like goes away, because we know all the JavaScript runtimes we have to worry about. We don't have to like worry about Microsoft Internet Explorer because we don't run on Microsoft Internet Explorer. And if we want to use features of JavaScript that aren't out yet, we can use Babel for that. There are some things about JavaScript, though, that we're less bullish about. One is that there's no integers, which is not a problem most of the time, but every once in a while it is. There's other bad defaults. A plus side is that the JavaScript community is big and strong. There's lots of small open source projects. So one of the problems with JavaScript is the date handling kind of sucks. Meetup is really all about dates, both on our classic project and on Meetup now. So bad date libraries are a problem for us. There turns out to be a library called JS-Joda that brings the Java 8 date time stuff to JavaScript, so we're using that, and we were able to contribute a pretty small module to hook that up to GraphQL. So if you know anyone else who needs that functionality, here's a shameless plug. The Unicode support in JavaScript is like kind of broken. I think there was a talk just now about how emoji work, but this like smiley face is like clearly only 1 character, but it says 2. You can work around it again with third-party libraries, and but it's work. We had to write code to do it, whereas other programming languages just work. Another thing that's weird, so if you look at this, we're looking inside our app. We're looking inside the JavaScript libraries that are packaged with our app. And you'll notice that something weird is that there's Objective-C and Java code inside the JavaScript package. And so this is how React Native modules are distributed if they come with native code. They just come all in one. There's no like companion project in the Maven repository. This has some benefits in that they can never get out of sync, but some flaws in that it's very confusing to Gradle to do stuff this way, and you sometimes get like kind of strange compile time errors that are difficult to understand. There's some things that we're just like unhappy about. One is that we're dependent on Facebook, pretty much. We don't have the resources to do stuff, to make core changes to React Native ourselves. So support for newer versions of Android in particular is a problem. You may or may not be aware that Google has got some deadline for making sure your app, if it includes native code, is got 64-bit versions of those libraries. Facebook has been like, trust us, we'll help you meet the deadline, but they haven't been really more concrete than that. If you have a list, it's called a flat list in React Native. It's very similar to a recycler view in Android. And you invert the list and you fling it on Android P, it flings the wrong way because React Native uses some weird undocumented reflection stuff. Again, they're like, we promise we're going to fix it, but if they don't fix it before Android Pie gets a significant adoption, we're going to have to work around it ourselves. And in general, we found the React Native roadmap process to be quite opaque. There's rumors of secret discussion forums where you can get the inside scoop, but we're not invited to them. If you are and you can invite me, maybe see me afterwards. Another thing that's weird is maps support. We had a lot of trouble. At one point, the main screen in our app was a big map, and so you're like, Google Maps, it's on Android, it's on iOS, it should be possible to write a React Native app for them. It turns out not to be the case because the way the libraries work on those two platforms, while consistent with each platform's practices, is not really consistent with each other. So writing a universal wrapper that covers all the functionality turns out to be quite difficult. The authors of the wrapper React Native maps did really valiant effort, but we just found it was causing huge performance problems for us and huge correctness problems. What the library actually does is it takes if you have a marker view, it renders that view to a bitmap and then tries to send that bitmap to the Google Maps library, which works except when it doesn't, which turns out to be a little bit too often. Mapbox has a React Native library that we found to be much more stable and featureful. We may end up having to pay for it at some point, which is one downside, and it's still not quite flawless. So one thing we're concerned about is performance. To say we're unhappy about performance is maybe too strong, but we are concerned about it sometimes. So if you remember before, we said that all our code is written in JavaScript. JavaScript, you may know, is single-threaded and it's callback based, but the question is which thread is the single thread? Is everything running on your UI thread? The answer turns out to be no. There's a separate JavaScript thread, which means that all UI updates have to go back and forth between the JavaScript thread and the Android main thread. So everything is a frame behind. Mostly this is okay, and in particular there's some special cases for the most common types of animations, so it doesn't have to go back and forth on every frame, but sometimes it's not okay and there's no workaround because that's how the library is built. Debugging performance problems in particular can suck. So we have this problem where Apollo, which is the GraphQL library we're using, had this completely incomprehensible bug. We're trying to file it, but we can't even quite figure out the conditions for reproducing it, where if you put your GraphQL statements in the wrong order, whatever wrong means, then it will start deep copying all your objects around millions of times. This led to incredibly slow startups on the order of seconds, and sometimes even out of memory crashes, and it's out of JavaScript memory, so it's really, you don't even get stack traces like you do when you're out of Java memory. Normal Android and iOS performance tools couldn't help us because all the problems were inside the JavaScript heap, into which they really kind of have no insight. We were eventually able to hook it up to the Chrome debugger. When you're running in Chrome, it's running on your laptop, so you probably won't run out of memory, but we were able to kind of figure out the patterns that were going on, eventually solve the problem, but it took us days to solve a problem that would be fairly straightforward if it were to happen just in Java or even Objective-C. Many things on Android and iOS are similar, but not all the things. And so when you're just writing once running in two places, you've probably had this experience where you got a designer or somebody who gives you this like mock and they're like, it's perfect, and you're like, no, it doesn't meet Android patterns, please fix it. When you're just writing the code once, that problem can make its way past the mocks and into your app if you're not careful. And also, nobody understands the back button problem, like really comes up to bite you when you're trying to do navigation without the benefit of the native tooling. So these are the documentation for the React Native text input keyboard type class. It's like edit text, and you'll notice there's like, I don't know, 6 keyboard types that are available on both Android and iOS, and then 5 more that are available only on iOS. But if you've ever read the Android input type docs, you'll know they won't even fit on the screen. There's way more than 6 of them. And so if you need one of the ones that's not part of the 6, you just sort of have to pray that one of the 6 is close enough for you. And figuring out which of these types turn into which of these types, it requires reading the React Native source code a little more carefully than I sometimes want to do on a Monday. So if you remember this example, I've shown it to you like 3 times already. I promise this is the last time. You see these switches, and it turns out that the React Native switch control doesn't actually get doesn't handle coloring properly, so we had to theme it using the native Android theming stuff, which is okay, but it meant we had to write some code that behaves differently on Android and iOS. And if you look at the very last line on the slide, you can see based on the platform you're running on, we just call the appropriate code. It's not a tremendous amount of work if someone on your team knows Android. If no one on your team knows Android, or when we have the problem on the iOS side, which I don't know, it gets harder to work around. So the question, like people ask me when they hear we've built this thing in React Native, would you use React Native again? My answer is yes, but it's a qualified yes. We would use it if we have the right problem again. Our experience has been that it's great for these kinds of smaller, brand new apps where iteration speed is almost more important than anything else. We don't think it's suitable though for all apps. We don't envision transitioning the Meetup app in particular at this point in time. And like a thing that was like fashionable to do for a year or two was build a sort of hybrid app where one thing was one screen was in native code and another screen was in React Native, and we have not seen very much evidence that that is like a good way to build apps. But who knows what the future holds. So that is my contact information on the left. If you're interested more in Meetup Now, it is also on the internet. Its website is on the right. And if you go there, you can request an invite. If you would like to talk more about this, and if you like Pi, in honor of Android Pi, you cannot get that on the internet, but you can get it in just a minute or two over at the Meetup table in the main area. So that's what I got.
So I was just wondering if you guys, did you end up ditching the whole maps component to your app, or did you find a workaround?
So we're using Mapbox currently. We may ditch it, but that's for product reasons, not technical reasons. We found the Mapbox SDK for React Native to work well enough for our use case, but we're even now starting to run into some of the edges, and we're not sure exactly if all of those edges are able to be worked around.
So you mentioned at the end that React Native was great for like you need to iterate quickly and get something out quickly. For something like Meetup Now, if you find like you want to continue working on that product and it's really successful, do you think it'll stay in React Native, or do you see like you might port it over to native code that might be more stable in the long term?
The glib answer is I would love to have that problem. If we can get to a point where we have that problem, then React Native has done its job for us. if 6 months down the road, React Native will hopefully be 6 months more stable. Maybe we'll be able to stick with it for a little while longer. Or alternately, we would be able to grow the team such that we can afford to develop things twice. I really don't know the answer to that question, but I think one of the strengths of React Native is that it's okay that we don't have the answer to that question.
Did you consider using Flutter?
We did not consider it. I don't know much about it. There were some good talks this morning at which I've learned more about it than I knew yesterday. We felt that the ecosystem around React Native, particularly even a few months ago when we started, was stronger by enough. We already had engineers who know JavaScript, so it's felt like the safer choice for us. All right, then let's eat some pie.